So I want to go ahead and get started because I want to be mindful of your time tonight, and because we're just so delighted that we have so much to share with you that we're bursting at the seams. And we're really just delighted to be here in person. This is HLF's 4th annual community meeting, and it's the first time that we've been in person since 2019. So as all of us have experienced so much time apart, it is just really, really special to be in person and to feel all of the energy and exuberance that you all bring to this space, to the work that you do, and for who you are as Lakewood residents. I'm Kate Ingersoll. I'm the Executive Director of the Healthy Lakewood Foundation, and it's my great privilege and honor to welcome you on behalf of the HLF Board of Directors. And I'd like to just take a moment and ask each board of directors just to stand and wave so everybody can see who they are. And I just want to give them a big clap and a thank you for the work that they do, for bringing this organization both through the pandemic and to the point where we are now grant making, and we are actively engaged in the organization, and we're delighted to be here with you all. I'd like to just take a moment to acknowledge some special guests that we have here. Mayor Megan George is here. City Council member Cindy Marks, and I believe that Sarah Keppel will be here later as well. And I'd like to just note that City School Board member Mike Callahan is here as well, and we're really grateful for your time and for your attendance. I also want to encourage you to ask questions and to provide feedback during this meeting. The goal is for this to be an engaging meeting where we get to hear from you as much as you get to hear from us. And we really encourage that we do that at each section. So there will be time for Q&A at each section that we have. Please be respectful of the opinions and ideas shared by each person here. As you'll learn from our community health needs assessment, there's a lot of diversity of thought that went into the feedback and into the different ideas and to the different experiences that we've been learning about that Lakewood residents have, and so we want to make sure that we honor those. And also, I'll just note, if you can, to please silence any electronic devices that you might have as well, just so that we're not interrupted. So I'm going to provide a brief overview of tonight's agenda, and then we're going to go ahead and get started. We will start with what's becoming a tradition, our centering activity that Chitra Walker, our board member, will lead us in just a few moments. And then we'll have a presentation on the recently released Lakewood Community Health Needs Assessment report. The assessment provides information about the Lakewood community, and it will inform Healthy Lakewood Foundation's strategy and grant making moving forward. And we'll briefly review HLF's grant-making model and then have table discussions with our grantee partners to highlight their work and their funded projects. And then we'll take a little bit of time for the HLF board members to provide some additional updates on our organization. And we do this because we really seek to demonstrate transparency and accountability in our policies and practices. And to close, we will share some final thoughts about moving forward together. So I'd like to take a moment just to ask Chitra Walker to come on up. She's going to lead us in this centering activity. We do this because we find that by taking a few moments just to center ourselves on being together, to focus on our purpose, and for getting our minds clear for what we'll learn helps us all. And so Chitra, welcome.
Thank you all for coming. We're so proud and happy that you're here to join us. As Kate said, this has become a tradition that we start with this exercise. It's just a simple mindfulness exercise. It's a meditation on simply the act of breathing. So to start, get into a comfortable position and allow your eyes to close or keep them open with a softened gaze. Begin by taking several long, slow, deep breaths, breathing in fully and exhaling fully. Breathe in through your nose and out through your nose or mouth. Allow your breath to find its own natural rhythm. Bring your full attention to noticing each in-breath as it enters your nostrils, travels down to your lungs, and causes your belly to expand. And notice each out breath as your belly contracts and air moves up through the lungs, back up through the nostrils or mouth. Invite your full attention to flow with your breath. If your mind wanders to thoughts, plans, or problems, simply notice your mind wandering. Watch the thought as it enters your awareness as neutrally as possible. Then practice letting go of the thought as if it were a leaf floating down a stream. Observe the types of thoughts that hook or distract you. Noticing is the richest part of learning. With this knowledge, you can strengthen your ability to detach from your thoughts and mindfully focus your awareness back on the qualities of your breath. Practice coming home to the breath with your full attention, watching the gentle rise of your stomach on the in-breath and the relaxing letting go on the out-breath. Allow yourself to be completely with your breath as it flows in and out. Breathe in and breathe out. Follow the air all the way in and all the way out. Mindfully be present, moment by moment, with your breath. As we come slowly to the end of this meditation, allow your attention to expand and notice your entire body. And then, beyond your body, to the room you are in now. When you're ready, open your eyes and come back fully alert and awake. The breath is always with you as a refocusing tool to bring you back to the present moment. And that is what I would want you to be now, in the present moment, with us as we think of this foundation and what we've done with you. And you all have done with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chitra. That was helpful for me. I can tell that I'm going to talk a little slower. I'm going to be a little quieter. Thank you for all for participating. That was just right. So I'd like to introduce HLF's board president, Kalila Worley-Billy, who has a few remarks to start us off as well.
Good evening, Lakewood community. I appreciate you all being here. And, one of the things as we are thinking about a perspective, the year that we had, although it's been a year of incredible opportunity, it's also been a year of grief, of loss, some confusion, and some readjustments. And instead of trying to find the words myself, I always go to words that are much greater and willfully presented. One of my favorite authors, Dr. Maya Angelou. And I want to read something, and as you think about this, maybe not in the space that some of you may have read this before, or even what Dr. Angelou meant when she wrote it. But as we think about this pandemic that continues to be a part of us, place yourself in this space and think through how you too may have felt these words throughout the course of this year, but also how we too hope to break free. Caged bird. A free bird leaps on the back of the wind and floats downstream till the current ends and dips his wings in the orange sun rays and dares to claim the sky. But a bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see through his bars of rage. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. The free bird thinks of another breeze, and the trade winds soft through the singing trees, and the fat worms waiting on the down bright lawn, and he names the sky his own. But a caged bird stands on the grave of dreams. His shadow shouts on a nightmare scream. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on a distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. Why this poem? Why this moment? Why now? I had several caged birds moments during COVID. I had several moments when it was just a fearful song of when will this ever come to an end? And one of the things, and I've experienced many great things throughout the course of it as well, was knowing that the work that this foundation has done allowed some birds to be free. It allowed them to be able to escape some of the barriers or burdens of financial realms that was holding them hostage for not being able to provide the services that they longed to do. It also helped some birds be free and creative of thinking of new things that they wanted to do and needed some support and some belief. As someone who not only is the president of this board, but also works for a nonprofit, I was really, really down around how we can make change. And foundations like Healthy Lakewood Foundation began to not only think creatively in this moment, but operate with a sense of urgency that allowed people to have some impact and be able to sleep just a little bit better at night. And even though many of us had caged bird moments and had fearful screams and dreams and songs, there are some bright spots along this work that helped us think through the moments that we helped some birds sing and to have the freedom to create. And we hope that this year continues to lead the way for us as a foundation to continue to think through that creativity, that freedom, and that urgency. Because we have yet to be done in this moment, but we can create many moments that create change. Thank you. I also now, before I step away, would like to talk about the work that we've done in collaboration with this wonderful city. Over the past year, Healthy Lakewood Foundation is grateful for the opportunity to build these relationships with the City of Lakewood officials. We are grateful to have been asked to serve on the Community Health Needs Assessment Steering Committee and appreciate Mayor George's and her team's collaboration approach to this project. I've personally been on calls and Zoom, and so it's really grateful to share space with you in this moment as well. Additionally, we are pleased to provide funding support the City of Lakewood's Neighborhood Paramedic Program, which was HLF's first systems levels grant. Mayor George, we invite you to join us at the podium to share your thoughts, and thank you for being with us tonight.
Well, good evening. Thank you, Kayla. It's truly an honor to be here this evening representing the city of Lakewood and to be here with all of you. I cannot express enough how nice it is to see faces again after a couple years of being locked down in our homes and with masks and on Zoom calls. It's so nice to see everybody in person. We here at City Hall appreciate the partnership that has developed between Healthy Lakewood Foundation and the City of Lakewood. We have a shared vision for Lakewood as a city that prioritizes the health and wellness of our citizens, and we embrace innovative ways for partners to come together to address and improve the well-being of Lakewood residents. One recent success story that Kayla mentioned is seeing the city and the foundation unite our efforts and resources in the city's new neighborhood paramedic program. Launched in August, this proactive effort connects the city's neighborhood paramedic staff with some of our most vulnerable populations, including seniors and lower-income individuals and families, to fill a serious gap in Lakewood's health and wellness environment. An initial focus of the program is a fall prevention program for senior citizens that uses EMS home visits to prevent trip and fall situations within resident homes. In 2021 alone, Lakewood EMS responded to more than 650 calls for senior citizens experiencing an injury from a fall, and more than half of those being serious enough to require transport to a hospital or an emergency room. The Healthy Lakewood Foundation invested $70,000 to help the city launch this program, dollars that help leverage public funds with a focus to prevent injuries and address medical issues before the need for a hospital or emergency room visit. In addition, this year, the foundation supported our current citywide health needs assessment being conducted by the Center for Community Solutions. The first part of the assessment is now complete, providing actionable data on the social determinants of health, including items such as economic stability, access to quality education and healthcare, neighborhood factors, and social and community context. The next step of the assessment will be a planning phase that takes the initial findings and moves towards action to improve community health and wellness. Both projects show significant community benefits we can bring to bear when we leverage the city's capacity and resources with the philanthropic investment of the Healthy Lakewood Foundation. I look forward to partnering with Kate and the Foundation's board to continue exploring new and impactful ways to build on this partnership and improve the health and wellness of our Lakewood residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor George. I really appreciate your time here. And thank you, Kalila, for your remarks and for sharing the poem. It's been a long time since I've read the poem, but I'm really glad to revisit it. Thank you. So Mayor George gave us a wonderful synopsis, both of the neighborhood paramedic program and of the community health needs assessment. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome up to the stage Dave Boss, who is city planner with the city of Lakewood, and also Emily Matillo, who is the director of research for the Williamson Family Fellow for Applied Research at the Center for Community Solutions. And Emily has been one of the lead researchers on the community health needs assessment and will really delve into the report with us. And so I'll go ahead and turn it over to both of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Haven't said anything yet. I'm already. So thank you very much, Healthy Lakewood Foundation, for hosting us and allow us to bring this to you. So again, I'm Dave Boss. I'm one of the senior planners here with the City of Lakewood, and I was the lead lead planner for planning and development in terms of pulling this together and getting it moving forward. And so I'm just going to talk very briefly just about that background, how we got to the assessment, and then I'll turn it over to Emily, who will talk about the assessment. So, and I fully recognize, and there are a lot of people in this room that were members of the Live Well Lakewood group. They're members of our steering committee, members of our advisory committee, and we truly appreciate all of the efforts and everything that went into that. And that's where I'm going to start, is back in 2019, the mayor's office pulled together a group of residents to go through and really study, community health, and started to delve into, what we now call the social determinants of health, from some of the models that they dug into as this Live Well Lakewood group. They produced, a long list of recommendations. From those recommendations, we pulled out the need for a bespoke community health needs assessment, as well as an action plan. So if you go to the next slide. So out of that, 2020, 2021, there was an awful lot of research that went, pulled those recommendations in. And so our office went through just a litany of health needs assessments, trying to understand, what does a health needs assessment look like? We kind of understood what a health needs assessment looks like traditionally for a hospital system, when that community is more determined in terms of the service community for that hospital and that location. But what would a municipal health needs assessment look like? From the Live Well Lakewood group, we had one example that came out of Old Brooklyn, which was the foundation for their recommendation. And so we spent an awful lot of time with the folks in Old Brooklyn talking about this health in action assessment that came out that really took a look at the divergence of community development and public health coming together. We also looked at the state of Ohio, Cuyahoga County, all of those. There's so many health needs assessments out there that cover different ground, different approaches. We really came up with kind of our own approach here. Obviously, there was COVID thrown in there at some point that really threw kind of a wrench in the works in terms of the smooth flow from 20 to 2021. But as we started to develop, two key things came out of all this research. The first was that approach, is how did we want to attack this? What did we want to get out of it, and what should it look like? And then the second thing is how are we going to control it and truly make it a community effort through that governing structure that you put as the foundation to run the effort. And one thing I do want to highlight is the key of having partners and making it a true community effort. And so in this work, especially in 2021, I do want to truly thank Healthy Lakewood Foundation, as well as Kristen's here from Three Arches Foundation as well, and both those two foundations and the city kind of formed that initial partnership that really helped drive this thing kind of, at least across the starting line, I'll say, and is going to drive it past the finish line. And then having both of these foundations here in Lakewood, along with the city of Lakewood, really does provide a heavy foundation in terms of sustaining this effort over the long term, which is really, really important. If you go to the next slide. So our general approach, or our intent through it, is kind of a threefold piece that builds from the top down. So the top is your traditional kind of your health needs assessment that you see from Fairview Hospital with Cleveland Clinic, and they take a service area, they look at it, they take a lot of data, they talk to patients, they talk to medical stakeholders and providers, and they come up with those needs that system needs to provide. We knew we needed that quantitative data foundation to pull into this. We have an existing relationship with Cleveland Clinic through the hospital master agreement. They have to include certain things in their Fairview assessment. So we looked for kind of the overlaps in that in terms of a mutually supporting effort with data and a lot of other assistance that we could get from the Cleveland Clinic system. But this middle piece here that we added on is truly what makes this unique. This is what we pulled from Old Brooklyn, and I like to think that we kind of pushed it even further. And the top bullet in there that captured that perspective of all residence groups was something that's been in there from the start, and that we really worked intentionally to create space at the table to get a proportional representation and perspectives as much as possible. It's not easy. It was very difficult, as community services will tell you, but this is what makes this assessment truly a community-focused assessment and unique from what the product that you get every 2-3 years from a hospital system. And then the last piece that we knew we needed an action plan to come out of this is kind of the so what that you get from an assessment is the now what, is what are we going to do with all this information? And that's where we are right now, and that's what we're starting to work on. So if you go to the next slide, please. The governing structure is equally as important as knowing what you want to get out of it. This is how you control it, how you make it a community effort. That steering committee formed from those partnerships, as well as we ended up pulling some resident representatives in there to make sure that the steering committee was proportionally, or not necessarily proportional, but at least some types of representative of the community that we were doing an assessment for. The advisory committee is critical. This was our larger group, 20 to 25 stakeholders that kind of rotated based on the different needs and the different topics that we were looking at the time. But both of these groups are critical. And then that last piece there, that proportional representative community involvement, it started very broad, as I'll talk about surveys, and then we kind of focused down on one of the lessons that we learned from Old Brooklyn and other assessments was they waited too long or too late to look back at that assessment and say, well, these are the responses we got, and this is what our community looks like. And those things didn't match up in terms of the demographic responses based on the demographics of the community. And so it's been something that we've actively tracked the responses and kind of that interaction, that engagement, so that we've gone back with interviews, focus groups, other things to fill those gaps in terms of the community demographics to make sure that this is truly proportionally representative. And so with that, I think that's my last slide. Hopefully that gave you a little bit of a picture in terms of how we kicked this thing off and how we got it moving. And now I'll turn it over to Emily, and she can tell you about the assessment itself. So thank you very much.
All right, well, thank you all for having me here today. This part of the project is always one of the most exciting parts, to be able to share all the work we've done over the past 6 months. So truly, I could probably talk to you about the assessment for about 2 hours, but I've been given 13 minutes. So you may see that I rushed through some of the slides, but please take note of what they are, because we will have a Q&A. So if there's something you see that you want to revisit, we can always go back to those slides. So I do recognize I will be going fast, but there's always more time to talk. So this is who Community Solutions is. We improve health, social, and economic conditions through nonpartisan research, policy analysis, communications, and advocacy. The next slide. This is who worked on the project. It's a combination of our policy team, communications team, research team, and then we also had the privilege of working with 2 med students. We used a trauma-informed framework. If you guys want to talk about more, we can come back to that slide. These are some of the indicators we used for the assessment. So that's a way of saying the data that we used for the assessment. So a lot of secondary sources. And then we also created some of our own data sources. And that was through, you can go to the next one. And that was through our survey. So Dave referenced some of the work we did in community engagement. And we sent out a survey to 6,000 residents. We got over 600, or maybe is it over 700? Over 600 responses, which is fantastic. It's rare to get that high of a response rate, but Lakewood is a very engaged community. That's like the first finding, as you all know, I'm sure. And then there were, as Dave mentioned, there were some gaps, and so we did some convenience sampling with specialized groups to make sure that their voices were heard. And then we also did some focus groups, which is in the next slide here. Oh, so this is some more our focus groups. We did 15 different focus groups. Those are some of the groups that we targeted. So our approach was to think about who might not be likely to fill out a paper survey, and make sure that we were doing personal outreach through focus groups with them. We also did key informant interviews with a number of experts in the community. Okay, so I'm gonna go over some assessment highlights. So the assessment really is 4 parts. There's an executive summary, there's the report document, there's a data slide deck, and then there's also data file. So everything except the data file is available to you now on our website. So the report includes a community profile, and then it's organized by social determinants of health, the key findings, and then also some subcategories within there. So today, as I'm going to quickly go through some of the findings, it's going to be organized by those social determinants of health, which Mayor George nicely laid out for us. So this is the first one, economic stability. And what I want to draw your attention to here is the mean household income. So I'm just sort of setting the stage for who lives in Lakewood. So currently the median household income is just over $54,000. And when we compare that to the local communities around Lakewood, you'll see that it's higher than Cleveland, just about the same as Cleveland Heights, and lower than Rocky River. And then we also wanted to take a look at income by by race. And so we can see that there is some difference between race within Lakewood. So white and Asian populations have higher incomes than Black and Hispanic. There's a lot of information on this slide, but that's sort of the takeaway, is that we know that there is disparity in income by race here in Lakewood. So this is survey data now. Previously, that was census data. And so we asked people about their economic stability in a few different ways. And one of the things that we found is that there's a percentage of the population, about 15%, who really probably struggles with economic stability. And one of the questions we asked to determine that was, if you needed to borrow $500, can you think of someone you could borrow that money from? So this is something like a car repair, furnace breaks, a medical bill. Is there someone that you can rely on? And about 15% of the population does not have someone in mind that could lend them that money. We also asked if people worry about money, and about a quarter of the population said yes. And the burden of worrying about money was not experienced equally. We see that Black residents are at a higher rate than the general population, same with LGBTQ residents. And then we learned that 40% of residents earning less than $50,000 annually regularly worried about money. So those residents who have a lower income are more worried about money on a regular basis. Okay, so now we're going to move into education, and we're going to kind of go chronologically here. And the next couple slides is data from the Ohio Department of Education. This is through their advanced reports portal. So what we're looking at now is literacy and whether or not children entering kindergarten are on track. So that blue box over there are all the students, and 43% of students are not on track with their literacy as they enter kindergarten. And then we broke it up into different categories. So when we looked at gender, English language learners, race and ethnicity, disability, and economically disadvantaged. And you can see English language learners, 83% are not on track with their literacy. When we looked at race and ethnicity, 60% of Black students were not on track. Disability, 73% of students with disabilities were not on track. And I can't quite see the number, but a higher number of economically disadvantaged students were not on track compared to those who are not economically disadvantaged. Okay, so then we moving up in grades, so we're into third grade now. And you can see there are still some of those similar differences that we saw in kindergarten, but there's also a bit of a leveling out. So we can see by third grade that many of those students who are not on track have gotten closer to being where their peers are in terms of literacy proficiency. The other thing to note on this slide is we see a dip right here. That's 2019, 2020, which is also the first year of the pandemic, right? So it's not surprising that we see a dip in proficiency during that year. The scores came back up in 2020, 2021 school year, but not quite to where they were pre-pandemic. Now we're moving on to graduation rates. So in 2016, there were 3 subgroups of students had distinctly lower graduation rates than the general graduation rate. And so those were Black students, English language learners, and students with disabilities. But from 2016 to 2020, all of those groups saw an increase in their graduation rates, which is fantastic. And it's most notably, it was among students with disabilities. And we think that may be in part due to the increased utilization of some of the scholarship programs. So I don't have it here, but in our data deck, you'll see that there was a huge jump in scholarship utilization, the John Peterson and the Autism Scholarship. Okay, so then those were all ODE, Ohio Department of Education data. This data here is from the American Community Survey, the census, and this is educational attainment. And what we're looking at, what we're interested in when we think about the educational attainment of residents is at that bachelor's degree and higher, because at that level of education, we see associations with better health outcomes. It doesn't actually matter if you have a PhD or a bachelor's degree, your health outcomes are going to be the same, but there is a big difference if you have a high school diploma compared to a bachelor's degree. We wanted to know, parents and residents' perception of the Lakewood Public Schools, and so 76% agree that Lakewood provides a high-quality education, and we found that that opinion did not significantly differ by any of the different ways we looked at it. So it didn't differ by race, income, or sexual orientation. Okay, so healthcare access and quality. So this slide shows you the disability prevalence. This is American Community Census data. And what we see is that, which is not entirely surprising, but that disability prevalence by age, the older the population group, the higher the prevalence of disability. These are just some quick facts about Lakewood, and this comes from the Healthy Northeast Ohio data. So some information about sleep and diet and exercise and routine checkups, lead levels. So these are some just real quick indicators of health. We were really interested in knowing if residents had access to primary care, because that's such an important part of health maintenance and preventative health. And so what we can see is that 89% of respondents had a primary care doctor, but there were some groups that had a lower rate of that. And so you can see the Hispanic and Latino population, only 63% of that group indicated that they had access to a primary care doctor. And then you can see also the LGBTQ had a slightly lower access rate to primary care. We also asked about mental health and counseling services, and so 83% of residents had access to counseling. And you can see here that those with lower incomes had less access, as well as those in the LGBTQ community. In our neighborhood and environment, we were interested in learning how people get around in the community. Lakewood is often thought of as a bikeable, walkable community, which it very much is. But we also learned that about 70% of residents are driving alone when they drive to work. And this is like maybe a little too detailed to go into, but 13% of households do not have a vehicle in the community, and 24 minutes is the average time somebody is driving to work from Lakewood. So findings from the environment, we also wanted to look at the difference between homeowners and renters. And so about 9% of respondents are concerned that they won't have stable housing in the next 2 months. However, that concern is not experienced equally. So, one of our big findings here is that renters have that worry at a much higher rate than homeowners, LGBTQ at a slightly higher rate than those who are straight, and Black at a higher rate than white residents, and then again, lower income at a higher rate than higher income people. And then you can also see, we asked people what they were worried about where they lived, mold, lack of utilities. I don't have it memorized and I can't see it, but you can see the list there. The things at the top are what people are more worried about, and on the bottom are what people are less concerned about. Social and community context. So in the past 2 years, I think we've all realized how important it is to be connected digitally, because for at least a year, most of us lived our lives through our screens in some way. What we found is that almost 88% of residents have an internet subscription, and 93% of residents have a computing device. So that is a laptop, a desktop, a tablet, a smartphone. And about 7% of residents have only a smartphone as their computing device. So that's sort of an important group of people that, they may be able to communicate with their smartphone, but they may not be able to do the more advanced things on their phones, or they may rely on their data plan, which can be a little bit of a burden. Then we looked at the residents without internet by income, and of those who don't have internet, 36% are earning less than $20,000. So again, that's not too surprising that the lower income residents have less access to the internet. Also, in the past 2 years, I think all of us became familiar with social isolation and actually were able to feel that instead of maybe just reading about it. So we use the social isolation and loneliness scale. This is actually a normed scale that is used. It's been used since I think the 1970s, and so there's a lot of data and research to back this up. But essentially, you can see that between 20 and 30% indicated some level of social isolation or loneliness in the past year. We also were interested in race relations, and so we asked what people thought about race relations in Lakewood, and you can see on this chart, the black respondents are the lighter color, and the darker blue is the white and non-Hispanic respondents. So the 6% of white residents and 51% of black residents indicate race relations are good or very good, but 30% of black residents and just 23% of white residents rate race relations as fair, and 19% of black and just 2% of white residents indicate race relations are poor. So we see that black residents were more likely to indicate that race relations were poor compared to their white peers. When asked if respondents had neighbors they could trust, which is really important when you live in a community that is so connected, and also you guys all live so close together, right? Such great density here in this community. About 76% said yes, that they did feel like they could trust their neighbors. However, respondents who were black, LGBTQ, or renters were significantly less likely to agree that they could trust their neighbors. Okay, so that was the assessment very quickly. So I have 133 slides that I drew that from. So you can see there's much more that you can dig into, and I really encourage you to visit the website, read the report, and really dig into those areas that are most relevant to you in your work or your interests. And I'll just really briefly touch on the action plan. So Mayor George and Dave referenced that all of this information is it's really good information to have, but it's not really valuable unless we do something with it. So the doing something with it is the part that comes next. And so the action plan will be developed again in part very much by the community and led through a process with the steering committee and the advisory committee. And so in October, we'll be inviting the Lakewood community to some planning charrettes to share some of the data I've shared today, and then also to start talking about what are the most important needs and how do we meet those needs as a community? What are the programs? What are the services? What are the infrastructure that the community needs to develop in order to address the needs we see in the assessment? I don't know that we need to go into that much detail, so thank you. So do we stop? Okay, yeah, so we definitely have time for Q&A. So does anybody have any questions? Yeah, and Melissa has a microphone so we can hear you.
We're doing this City Club style.
Oh, sure. So, hi, I'm Eric Meinhardt. I'm representing Legal Aid Society tonight.
Oh, great.
I was surprised by the one statistic for people with housing condition concerns, that the top concern was clean drinking water at over 13%. That really surprised me, and I'm wondering if there's anything else you could say about it to explain, because I just didn't know that was an issue in Lakewood.
Yeah, we also were surprised by that. We expected some of the other things you hear about more often to rise to the top, and I don't have an explanation for it. The question was asked in a way where it was, which of these things are you concerned about? Check off as many as you are, and that just was one that was checked off the most often, but it was not a question that asked for additional explanation, so I don't really know. Any other questions?
Hi, Danielle Locke. I'm a resident here. Actually, I was curious about when the data was collected about the times for commute and the number of people that work from home and that piece of it, just because I feel like everybody on my street is home all day long. So.
Yeah, so that data is from the 2020 American Community Survey, the 5-year estimates. So that data was collected, you know, basically at the beginning of the pandemic, but probably does not reflect the changes we saw in the pandemic. It just happened to be the most recently available data that we had access to. So, you know, that number we expect will go up in the next ACS release, but we just haven't seen it reflected yet.
Hi, Tom Bullock, City Council. I was actually waving to somebody over here, but since there's one statistic that jumped out at me, there was a slide that you had about neighborhood trust and trusting your neighbors, and there was a distinct difference between neighbors of different ethnicities. Seems to me that our community can work on that somehow and needs to work on that, and that shouldn't take $1 million and another study. Maybe we could, with the communities writ large's help, figure out ways to build neighborhood connections, because we can do better than that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is exactly the next step, is seeing those things that kind of shock you or disappoint you or confuse you, and figuring out, like, how do we get to where we actually want to be? And we know Lakewood's a very engaged community, so that's a really good start. You have a really good base to address some of these issues, including ones about relationships and trust.
Hi, so I saw that some of the people that were asked to participate in the survey were children, youth. So I wanted to know, like, if there were any outlying health issues that children pointed out in the community.
Yeah, so the paper survey that was mailed, we asked those 18 and over to fill it out, but we did do a focus group with youth, and we did it with the H2O group. We asked them to help us convene a group, which is a fantastic group. I got to facilitate that focus group, and I fell in love with all of those kids. But one of the there were a few really interesting things in that group. One was the way they talked about mental health. They could very clearly identify that as a need amongst their peers, not necessarily amongst themselves, because I think maybe 16-year-olds don't have that awareness, but they could see it in their peers, and they talked about how they could see a friend walk in and know that the friend was depressed that day, or was having a bad day, or needed some extra support. And that is not a way. I've done focus groups with other youth, and it was different than the way people talked about it, either pre-COVID or maybe just in different communities. So I think that was an outlier. They also talked about vaping. Like, there's a lot of vaping at Lakewood High School, in case anyone didn't know. That was like a very big, everybody vapes, just like a very commonly accepted thing that's happening that's probably not a good health practice. And I think that is all for questions for now, but I am excited about this conversation. I'm sure that many of you will come to our charrette in October, so please look for that information, and we can continue this conversation and start talking about planning. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emily. As you can imagine, I don't know how she's managed to have all of that data in her head. She's probably a walking encyclopedia of Lakewood. And so this is just the beginning of this conversation. And so I would imagine that as we sort of dig into more of this, that we will all have more and more questions. And so this is not the end of that. We're just starting into the action plan, and all of you can be involved in that process as well. And I just want to take a moment, if we could, just to note the folks who have been a part of the steering committee for the planning of the CHNA, and also the advisory members, the advisory committee members as well. And so I just want to make sure that I acknowledge from the steering committee, Chad Berry, the director of the Department of Human Services, and Laura Jaisley, the assistant director of the Department of Human Services, Kristen Broadbent of the Three Arches Foundation, Angelina Steiner of the Anti-Racism Task Force. And if all of you could just stand up and wave so everyone sees who's been part of building out the infrastructure for this plan. And I'd also just like to ask each person, and I will miss somebody if I do it and try to say all the names. So the folks who have also been on the advisory committee are also here at the table with you. And if those folks who have been on the advisory committee could also stand up as well. These are folks who have been helping to recruit for the focus groups. That includes Trish Rooney of Lakewood Community Services Center. It includes Allison Urbanek of Lakewood Alive. If I am missing anyone else, I apologize profoundly. But I just want to make sure, and Leslie Krogman of the rec department, there have been a lot of people who have been involved in the planning of this, and so just know that there are lots of ways to be involved, and lots of the people that you trust and who are doing great work in our community have been building this to bring us to where we are right now. We're going to just take a moment and we're going to transition over into talking just a little bit about our grant making model. We'll do that quickly, but I also just want to take a moment and ask one of our board members, Dr. Chuck Garvin, to come on up. He's going to just share a little bit of insight into the social determinants of health. Sometimes we talk about these, and I think that he brings a really great perspective as a doctor and as a Lakewood resident to share some insight into them. So if you would, please.
So as Kate said, I am a family doctor, and I am absolutely committed to providing quality medical care. I've had a career of helping people improve their health. That's giving them antibiotics when they have an infection, taking care of them in the hospital when they need to be in the hospital, giving them the right advice and the right medications if they have chronic conditions, diabetes, hypertension, heart failure, arthritis, even depression. So that's really what I have, the core of what I have done for many years. But there's so many conditions outside of what I can treat that have a huge impact on people's health. I can treat somebody for the rash they have because of the bed bugs that they have. Take care of the rash. But if they do not have the very substantial wherewithal to get the bed bugs removed from the house, they're going to get that rash back. I can order physical therapy for the person who's having terrible back pain. But if that person really can't afford co-pays for their therapy, or they're already working 2 jobs and having trouble with childcare, they may not be able to take care of the treatment that's available for them. Diabetes and heart failure and lots of medical troubles are deeply affected by healthy eating. There's a lot of folks who just don't have access to healthy produce and eat a lot of highly processed foods, high salt foods, fast foods that have very adverse effects on their health status. There's a world traveler, public health doctor, Roy Brown, who I think summed this up pretty well. He said penicillin may be needed to cure pneumonia, but it won't stop the roof from leaking. And I think about that quite a bit. We heard quite a bit, the social determinants of health in this review that we just had. I do want to say that the impact, the percentage of impact that those have on people's health is quite profound. For most of us, our genetics probably contributes 10 to 15 to 20% of what our health status is going to be. Our access to high quality medical care is probably 15 to 20% of what kind of health status we're going to have. That leaves 60 to 70%, which are these social determinants of health that have such enormous impact on people's health. We ignore these at our peril. And I think we already heard that these impact different parts of our population to different degrees. So we have health outcome disparities. And by disparities, we really mean how much, or what is the component of preventable conditions that have these impacts on various parts of the population. In Greater Cleveland, we have some neighborhoods where the life expectancy is less than 65 years old. We have areas in Greater Cleveland just a few miles away that is 88, 23 years different. City of Lakewood, we probably range from 70% life expectancy in some neighborhoods to up to 80 in some others. So Lakewood, the Healthy Lakewood Foundation is really very much committed to looking in the areas that we can have impact on all of our health and wellness in this town, but particularly where we can take on the disparities in healthcare and what we can do for vulnerable populations. So.
Thank you, Dr. Garvin. So I'm going to just touch on briefly about our grant making. And as folks may well know, in July, we awarded over $250,000 to 12 organizations that are serving Lakewood residents through program services through our Community Grants Funding Program. And many of the folks, in fact, all of the organizations that we funded are represented here tonight, and we really appreciate everyone's time to come and share the work that they do at each of these organizations. Mayor George gave a really great overview of our systems level grant that we've made to the city, which is the Neighborhood Paramedic Program. That's our first systems level grant that we have made in our history, and that's another level at which we seek to work to try to affect through advocacy and through systems change practices and by affecting models of care that underlie societal issues. We also have right now open for applications our neighborhood opportunity grants, which are hyper-local efforts that support community building and engagement. And they're a way that lots of people in Lakewood and lots of small groups can get involved and share great ideas, innovative ideas, and try to practice community building and test innovative ideas through small grants. And so those are open through September 28th, and I encourage you to check them out. And if you have questions, please reach out to us. That being said, I'd like to also take this time and this moment to introduce Lacey Hoffman, who is our grants coordinator. And Lacey has joined, or I should say rejoined, Healthy Lakewood Foundation this past June. Lacey was prior to this our foundation coordinator, and then took some time off and went to Candid and learned even more skills around grant making, and we are delighted to have her. She's an incredible resource for all kinds of different types of programs in Lakewood, and also ways to enhance grant making proposals. And so she is available here with me to help support any grant making ideas that you may have and want to share. And so I hope that you'll reach out to her as well. So Lacey, if you want to just can wave so everyone knows who you are. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to transition over into our table discussions. And what we've done is we've asked each representatives from each organizations that we've recently funded to share a little bit about the work that they do with all of you, and we can ask questions and have table discussions. And then at the end of those discussions, we're going to ask one person, not necessarily the HLF board member or the organization representative, but even just anyone attending, to share one key learning. So it can be something astounding that you didn't know this organization did, something hilarious that this organization does that you didn't know that they did, or something profound. Whatever it could be, just one key learning, and we're going to go around and share that. So each of us gets to take away one thing about each of these incredible organizations tonight. So go ahead, make yourselves comfortable. I will also say that if you need to stand up, move around, we have a lot of cookies over at the table, so if you need a little carb infusion, help yourself, get some water, and then we'll start with our discussions. So I'm sorry to interrupt these conversations. I wish I had the ability to freeze time so that we could talk longer, but I want to make sure that I get us all home on time. So Courtney's going to walk around with a microphone to each of your tables, and she's going to just ask you each to share one thing so that we can all learn together. And so we're going to start over here with the Legal Aid Society. And so whoever is going to provide that key learning, please stand up. That would be great. This is Eric Meinhardt. And just, if you can just say who you are, that would be great. And we're all ears.
Hi, everybody. I'm Eric Meinhardt. I'm from the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland. I just love Lakewood. Everyone at this table already knew each other, so we are a super engaged community. So one thing I wanted to share that Legal Aid Society is working on in Lakewood has to do with a major legal issue that people in Lakewood face. So as you know, there's a lot of renters in Lakewood. Over 50% of the people that live here are renters. Many of them will face eviction at some point. Only 2% of renters nationwide will show up to an eviction hearing with an attorney present. So I'm not sure how many people here have ever had to use an attorney for a civil issue. So you know that their expertise is so important. And we're working right now with the City of Lakewood and through the Healthy Lakewood Foundation to provide legal services to those who are facing eviction and giving them some help. So thank you.
Okay, let's go over to Youth Opportunities Unlimited. And Missy Tomes was representing, and Steve?
Hello, my name is Steve. I live in Lakewood. I have a tough act to follow. I sat with Youth Opportunities Unlimited, you, as it's known. You. Sorry about that. I'm already off. Anyway, the big thing that I took away from this is that the individuals that get involved in this program have a double-digit higher graduation rate than others who do not participate in this program. That's all I got. Thank you.
Just speaking here. And Allison Urbanik represented Lakewood Alive, and so have a report out.
Hello, I'm Megan DeFranco from the YMCA of Greater Cleveland. I'm actually relatively new to this area. I just moved to Cleveland about a year ago, so I did not realize all the services that Lakewood Alive provides, and I learned that the grant that they were given from Healthy Lakewood Foundation is for Project Safe Senior. So they go into senior homes and do an assessment of different safety areas in the home. So I just found that really fascinating. And they said that it's hard for people to admit that they're old. So they hope that more people will take advantage of their free assessment. And they want to call it, instead of aging in place, they call it universal design. Checking my notes, so I thought that was a unique way to phrase it. Thank you.
We have Reach Out and Read Greater Cleveland, and April Walker is going to be presenting for the group.
Hi, hello, I'm a Lakewood resident. I learned from the team at Reach Out and Read that between the ages of 0 and 5, there are about 15 child wellness visits that take place. And so this organization is helping pediatricians and nurse practitioners, et cetera, integrate books into those sessions to assess for reading and prepare for some literacy work that needs to happen. If you are over the age of 5 and your brain is fully developed, then there's still hope for you. It's just an uphill battle. So kudos to this team for getting in early and often.
Thank you. So we're heading over to the West 117th Foundation, and Steve Sakin, you will.
Hi there. So I'm representing the West 117th Foundation. I had served as their inaugural executive director, but now I'm doing consulting. But the Healthy Lakewood Foundation provided us a grant to launch a 2-year pilot project, the LGBTQ Youth Sports League, a first-in-the-nation program to provide recreation and sports opportunities for youth to participate as their authentic selves. And I have to do a shout out to the City of Lakewood because they've been amazing. Mike Callahan, we had a Zoom call. You introduced us to Superintendent Niswicki. Mark Walter has been amazing. We launched the program September 10th at Hayes Elementary, and we are working every Saturday between now and December 17th for this Youth Sports League. We're also working with Colors Plus Youth Center that are going to be helping us with some pre and post assessments. They've already developed that, and mental health screenings where necessary for these youth. And it wouldn't have been possible without the Healthy Lakewood Foundation. So we are super, super excited, and we're getting kids enrolled and looking forward to many positive returns. So thank you. I've got materials if anybody wants any.
going to go over to Asian Services in Action, and I'm not sure who's representing, but, oh, Dane?
Hi, yep. I'm Dane McCaskill, and I'm a Lakewood resident, and yeah, I'm with Asian Service, well, I'm not, the table is the Asia Services in Action, and I learned that the name is hyper-focused, but the group that it supports is really a big group, including not just Asian immigrants and refugees, but also folks from Afghanistan and Ukraine. And in addition to immigration services, they're providing really core support around resettlement activities like building credit, safety, and access to services to build a life in the United States, which is super cool. And they are represented in Lakewood in an after-school program at Emerson, which helps new, I guess English learners is the word that was used, in that school, I guess have more access to different programs after school.
Thank you. We'll head on over to Neighborhood Family Practice.
Okay. Angelina Steiner. I am speaking on behalf of Neighborhood Family Services. So first, they would like, well, I'm not sure if they want us to know, but they shared that Ola Tacos is really great. They eat lunch there like pretty much every day. So go check out Ola Tacos. So the Healthy Lakewood Foundation funded Neighborhood Family Services for a patient advocate. And basically the role of the patient advocate is to be the support for the patients, providing services, interpretive services for refugees and English as second language individuals, coordinate services. They're looking to do a diaper drive and be a diaper site. So basically the patient advocate is there helping that individual every step along the way. And I did learn that transportation is an issue. And something that we talked about is Lakewood. The city of Lakewood does provide transportation for Lakewood residents within Lakewood. But a thought I had is, wouldn't it be great if possible transportation could get outside? Because a lot of times they have appointments that are outside of Lakewood. So I'm thinking Chad and Laura maybe connect with Sophia and strategize around transportation. So, okay, that's all I had.
We'll head over to Lakewood Community Services Center. Thanks, Mike.
Sure. Mike Callahan with the Lakewood Board of Education, but sat here with Trish and from Lakewood Community Services Center, and she informed us that during COVID, the food delivery went to 5 days a week drive-through, March through September of 20, and then they converted in September of 20, is that right, to home delivery, and it's been that way ever since, delivering to 1,100 houses twice a month, approximately 5,200 unique people. So I had no idea of the staggering number served by the organization and the great work they do. So.
Over to Eden.
I'm here with Eden Inc., and what I learned was that landlords in Lakewood are not accepting many vouchers anymore, housing vouchers. And so the money that Eden gets, they had a pilot program that was very successful in Cuyahoga County, and now they're going to try it specifically geographically in Lakewood, where they will go to the landlords and say, we will put up a second security deposit, we will pay for damages, we will help cover maybe back rents. They'll do whatever they can to get those landlords to say, okay, maybe I'll take a chance on this person with this housing voucher. So it's a good start, and good luck to you.
So we're over with both the library and the Lakewood Recreation and Education
Hi, I'm Danielle Locke. Sorry, I said that earlier. We actually have two at our table, so I'll make it quick. But first, we have the Lakewood Public Library, which is working with an organization called Connecting for Kids, and if you've ever seen the flyer, they do a bunch of education and support for families with children that are struggling. Right now, they're focusing around children diagnosed with ADHD, autism, and eventually other types of disabilities. But what the grant pays for is for speakers to come in, and they have babysitting and some other services where they talk about stress management. What was the one you just had? You just did one last night? Anxiety, so other, support services for parents who are struggling with issues with their children. And then we also have the Lakewood Rec, which is wonderful. They are working on teaching swimming lessons for refugees. People who can't speak English come into our community, and the big aha moment, there were 109 saves in the 2022 swim season alone, which shocked me, and how many of those? 40 were people who didn't speak English. And the other part of it is that, did you know there are 28 languages spoken in the Lakewood City School District? That's mine.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, friends. Who's speaking?
Hi, everyone. Tom, again, from City Council. I got nominated because everybody else here already knows about the program. So thanks to the Healthy Lakewood Foundation for underwriting with a grant. The community paramedic, Michael Sanders here, who got equipment, educational materials, and soon a vehicle from the foundation. And a great example here is what you can do to prevent falls. It's an educational outreach to aging residents who live at home. And we know from the data that there's a disproportionate amount of falls that can be very serious. It shows up in the 911 calls. And so if we can be successful at reducing the severity, then people can stay in their home, which is what everybody wants, and there's also better connectivity for mental health, et cetera. So it's a systems change type intervention, which is very important and smart, I think. And then when a community paramedic finds a need or finds a resident who needs help, then can plug into Human Services here and all the support they provide, and/or Lakewood Alive over at that table. And I want to credit Dr. Roland Anglin, Dean of Levin College, for the systems change. That was his comment. I wanted him to speak. So I got to cite my sources. And we should all be honored that he's on the board of Healthy Lakewood Foundation, because he's a big, important regional leader and a really nice guy to work with, too. So.
Indeed.
Hi, I'm Carol Chapman. I am a resident and member of the Anti-Racism Task Force. So I was sitting with Madison Court Community Coalition, and I learned a lot of things about all the amazing community events that they hold at Madison Park, especially bringing people together and really learning about our differences and how communities can learn from each other, especially after the violence we saw at Madison Park. So, but one of the really interesting things that I learned was that they also have some money from the grant to train some youth outreach coordinators and really help them learn how to organize and build community at a young age. So very exciting.
Thank you, everybody. We have really put everyone to work this evening. Just with all the learning and listening, I hope that you feel as if you have really learned more about Lakewood and about the great work that's happening here. I want to just be mindful of time, and so one of the things that we did have planned is that we were going to have HLF board members provide a very brief update on the committee work. One thing that I'll just turn your attention to is on your tables, you have a couple of handouts, and one of them is just a brief report on some of the work that we've done. So instead of us sort of telling you all of that. You can read about the work that our committees are doing, who our board members are, and some of the way that we're structured and how we do our work. We're trying to build out our website so that more and more of the information that so more of our work is becoming public, so that you can see that, you can investigate, you can question. All of our financial reports are there, and so is our community engagement accountability plan, which are all things that share with you the ways that we feel obligated and entrusted to interact with the community and be responsible to you with the funds that that have been entrusted to the Healthy Lakewood Foundation Board. I'm going to ask folks if any board members would like to come on up for just a brief moment to provide just like a quick, how are we doing? What do you think, Becca? Okay, so are we okay if all right. So because we're going to be mindful, I am going to just acknowledge so that all of you know who she is. Healthy Lakewood Foundation has started working with a communications consultant, and her name is Faith Boone. So Faith, if you could stand up, just so that in all the ways, Faith has been educating us about how to engage with social media and how to share our message and get it out into the community, and she's been doing a really great job. So we also want to be able to share and engage with you and all of the work that you're doing. So if you have ideas or things that you want to share with us, please let me know, because Faith has great ideas and there are ways that we can promote the work that you're doing as well. We really feel responsible for doing that. You all have taken time to be with us and to help share your work here and to help educate the community and educate us, and we're really grateful for that. I'll just note that, so we're gonna skip this part, just so that everybody gets home, because I think it's really important that everybody gets to tuck in the people that need to be tucked in, including ourselves. I do want to just note that there will be lots of ways to continue to engage in the Lakewood community and with Healthy Lakewood Foundation and with these incredible organizations. You can volunteer. You can donate to any of these organizations that you've seen here, and we will be helping to spread the word about the action plan and the ways that you can be engaged in that. I will just note that I think one of the themes and one of the messages tonight has been moving forward together. The together piece, I hope you have really taken as being instrumental and foundational to our ability to be successful. No one entity can solve any of the problems that we've looked at in the community health needs assessment, and we all have a role to play, and we all have assets, expertise, and experience that we can bring to solving many of the challenges that we're facing as a community and to increase what's incredible about Lakewood already. I want to just let Kalila take a few moments to say some closing words, and then we will we'll give ourselves some time to close out the evening. Thank you.
I started off by talking about the caged bird, and now I want to talk about the free birds. And so one of the things that I do want to do is thank this incredible board. When I think about where we were in this space the first time we had this meeting, we did not have an ED. We only had about 10 months of really truly getting to know each other, connecting with each other, learning each other. Some of us was learning this city from new perspective, new lenses, new eyes, and to think of the growth that we've been able to do in a pandemic has been mind-blowing. And I also want to take this time to thank Kate, who not only has led us in the midst of this pandemic, but who has constantly taken us a step up. And so I appreciate the dedication, the quality, and also just the relationships and the connections that she is making in this city that helps us as a foundation have a presence, even in the midst of being shut down. So thank you so much, Kate, for being our AD. We truly appreciate you and your leadership. If you see her talking points, everyone on the board knows we are grateful to be able to do full-time jobs, be full-time spouses and parents, and still be able to be productive. And that takes a lot of time, so thank you truly from the bottom of my heart. Also want to thank you all for being here. We talked about the impact of giving these grant dollars, but what I didn't name is the learning that we had. You had table discussions about these organizations. We had meetings and discussions and in-person and Zoom sessions with you all, and we have become better for it. And so I appreciate the work that you're doing, the work you're continuing to do, and please continue to spread the word. We are a learning foundation, but we also want to know where we are needed and where it matters most. So thank you all again. Appreciate you all being here. Thanks to the board. Thank you, Kate, and thanks for everyone who helped put tonight together. Kate?
We're going to send you on out. We will send you a survey tomorrow, so any feedback that you have from this meeting, we'll take it. Please, the good, the bad, any of it, and also your suggestions and ideas for improving this and ways to continue engaging. I wish you all a very safe and happy evening, and we can't wait to be with you again. Thank you so much.